Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Deity, and today I'm going to be bringing you an Enhanced Shaman Mythic Plus guide for Season 4, Patch 9.2.5. In this guide, I plan to cover everything from talents to covenants, soulbinds, conduits, legendaries, gear, stats, rotation, everything you can think of. But before we get into any of this, I wanted to let you guys know that I stream Mythic Plus and Raid at twitch.tv/lfdeity. You can always catch me there, come hang out, ask questions, chill, see what I'm about, do whatever. I'll have timestamps posted for this video, so any information you need can be accessed easily and quickly. If you guys have any questions that you come up with throughout the video, please feel free to leave a comment. I will get back to them as quickly as I can. So getting into Enhancement Shaman, this class has always felt so smooth and fun to play for me, and it's very easily become one of my favorite classes ever. I've always had a fascination with this class. I love the RNG aspect of it. I love that you have to play well in order to maximize your output, and that's what's bringing me to making this guide. Now that we got me out of the way, I want to talk very briefly about the current state of Enhancement Shaman. Enhancement Shaman right now, from what I've seen, is in its strongest state, but just because it's in its strongest state does not mean it is the best class. I would say it's pretty middle of the pack in comparison to other classes right now in Mythic Plus, but that doesn't mean that Enhanced isn't capable of timing high keys. It's just their damage profile is a little bit specific and very few dungeons actually require it. What I mean by that is Enhanced has the best funnel damage in the game and also has what I'd consider some of the strongest multi-target damage. Now, multi-target damage is very different from AoE damage, and it's very different from cleave damage. What I mean by that exactly is Enhance has a lot of dots and debuffs that you can put on multiple targets, and it also has some abilities that can hit multiple targets, but it's not AoE and it's not cleave. This, in my opinion, however, makes Enhancement Shaman super strong in 2 to 4 target cleave situations, and I'll get into where this unique playstyle fits in later on in the video. But now that we got that all out of the way, let's get into the talents. So for Enhancement Shaman, a good majority of the dungeons require the same talent setup. To start with the level 15 talent row, Lashing Flames. This is just a debuff that gets applied through your Lava Lash, and it increases the damage of your Flame Shock by 100%. Lashing Flames is also paired very nicely with Hot Hand in the level 25 talent row. Hot Hand gives your offhand auto attacks a 5% chance to reset the cooldown of Lava Lash and reduce the cooldown by 75% while also increasing its damage done. For the level 30 talent row, it's pretty much up to preference. I always prefer taking Spirit Wolf. Spirit Wolf gives your Ghost Wolf an added defensive/speed buff, which can come in clutch if you have no defensives left and you're not able to heal yourself. You can use this as a last second DR. In the level 35 talent row, you pretty much always take Fire Nova. Fire Nova is one of Enhance's only AoE damaging abilities. So for Mythic Plus, you pretty much want to run this all the time, except for 2 dungeons that I can think of specifically. Those 2 being Upper Karazhan and Mechagon Workshop. And for those 2 dungeons specifically, I highly recommend taking Hailstorm. Hailstorm allows your Frost Shock to cleave 1 additional target for each Maelstrom weapon spent on a free cast. The reason why this is so strong is because Upper Karazhan and Mechagon Workshop have a lot of 2 to 5 target cleave situations where Hailstorm is able to maximize the benefit from it. Moving on to the level 40 talent row, you always take Nature's Guardian. This is just the best defensive option you can take. Enhancement Shaman in general is a pretty squishy spec, so any additional survivability you can take will be extremely useful. Next up, we have Sundering. Sundering performs the best out of all the level 45 talents in both AoE and single target scenarios, so you always take this. It also has the added benefit of CCing any enemies that get hit by it, so you can interrupt casts with it. Lastly, in the level 50 talent row, we take Elemental Spirits. Elemental Spirits is one of the more complicated talents, so I'm going to break it down for you really quick. So how it works is Elemental Spirits will reduce the cooldown of Feral Spirits by 30 seconds, and it will also make the wolves that you spawn be imbued with either fire, frost, or lightning effects. These effects buff your abilities. Each of these buffed wolves gives your abilities a chance to debuff the enemy with that specific school type. So for example, the fire debuff is called Molten Weapon, the lightning debuff is called Crackling Surge, and the ice debuff is called Icy Edge. What this means is that Molten Weapon will increase your fire damage, Crackling Surge will increase your lightning damage, and Icy Edge will increase your frost damage. I'll explain why these buffs and debuffs matter in the rotational part of this video. The best covenant to run for Enhancement Shaman is Necrolord. Necrolord offers Enhancement Shaman two very useful covenant abilities which work well within their kit. These two abilities are Primordial Wave and Fleshcraft. Primordial Wave acts like a second Flame Shock or a Riptide if you play Resto Shaman. This ability is especially strong if you pair it with the Covenant Legendary, but we'll talk about that in a second. Fleshcraft is especially strong for us because Enhancement Shamans, as I said earlier, do not have a lot of ways to survive things, so this just adds another defensive to our toolkit. Moving on to Soulbinds and Conduits, you should always run Plague Divisor Merilith. Plague Divisor Merilith gives you the opportunity to run triple potency and also offers a mastery bonus after channeling Fleshcraft. The three potency conduits you should always aim to run are Magma Fist, Focus Lightning, and Tumbling Waves. Magma Fist increases the damage of your Lava Lash against enemies that have Flame Shock currently active on them. Focus Lightning makes your free casts of Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning do increased damage, and Tumbling Waves gives your Primordial Wave a chance to not incur its cooldown. For the Endurance Conduits, you want to run Vital Accretion and Refreshing Waters. Vital Accretion grants you a health bonus anytime you cast Earth Elemental. This buff only lasts for 1 minute and does not count as an instant heal, so make sure to cast it before any damage comes out. Refreshing Waters allows us to do a lot of off healing for ourselves, so the healers have to worry about us a lot less. This is just a side note, but I highly recommend making a self-cast macro or a mouse over macro to utilize this the best. I'll post the macro for this in the description below. For the one finesse spot in this build, I personally like running Thunderous Paws, but you can run whatever you like. Everything works pretty well. So for legendaries, the first legendary you're going to want is the Unity legendary. If you haven't finished the Zereth Mortis campaign, or if you're not revered with the Enlightened, then feel free to use the Necrolord Covenant legendary. I recommend putting the Unity on your cloak, and if you have to use Splintered Elements, I recommend putting that on your neck. Plan to make both of these legendaries with Haste and Mastery missives. What this does for you is after casting Primordial Wave, your next Lightning Bolt will hit all enemies affected by your Flame Shock. For each enemy hit by that Lightning Bolt, you'll get 10% haste. This effect stacks up to 6 times at 60% haste. The second legendary you always want to run with that is Primal Lava Actuator. Primal Lava Actuator makes it so each tick of your Flame Shock reduces the cooldown of your Lava Lash and increases the damage that it deals. For stats, you should always prioritize having Haste, then Mastery, then a little bit of Verse. Haste allows you to spam more abilities and build your Maelstrom weapon up quicker, and Mastery increases the damage of all your fire and elemental abilities. Taking a little bit of Verse increases your damage very slightly and also increases your survivability. But most importantly, you should prioritize getting the highest item level gear, as often that will be the biggest DPS increase. Stats are secondary in that regard. I should also point out that it's extremely important you sim yourself to tell what will do the most damage. The launch of Season 4 also came the ability to loot the Dinar. This Dinar is a token you earn after completing a quest for killing fated raid bosses, and can be earned by killing them on any difficulty, including LFR. You have to kill 30 raid bosses total, and I know this seems like a lot, but it's well worth it. After you've obtained your first Dinar, you only have to kill 15 more raid bosses to get a second one, and then 5 more to get a third. Once you obtain the token, you're able to trade it in at a vendor next to the Great Vault for any of the raid loot. The loot you get from all 3 of these vendors come at normal item level, but if you happen to raid at Heroic and Mythic difficulty, you can receive a second currency that can be used to upgrade it to either Heroic or Mythic item level. To upgrade it to Heroic item level, you need to kill 20 bosses and loot 20 of this said currency. The same is applied to Mythic difficulty as well. You can also use these currencies to upgrade any loot you've gotten from within the raid as long as it was within Season 4. I know it was a little off topic, but these currencies were kind of confusing, so blame Blizzard, not me. Anyway, back to the Dinar. The prio list for which loot you should get first goes as follows. Enhancement Shamans only have one 311 item level weapon, so I highly recommend getting Domination's Deliverance. You should spend your second Dinar on either another 311 weapon or a Cruciform Vein Ripper. It depends whether you're doing Mythic Plus or raiding as your main content. Having a second 311 one-hand will give you more AoE damage, while having a Cruciform Vein Ripper in your offhand will give you more single target damage. So the choice is ultimately up to you. After you get your 2 weapons, I recommend getting a max item level trinket, preferably either the Decanter's Endless Howling or Sigil. Aside from Domination's Deliverance, these items can change based on what you already have. What I mean by that is if you have a 304 trinket that already performs pretty well, it might not be a good idea to spend only one of your 3 Denaris to replace it. So what I'm saying is just make sure what you're getting will be the biggest upgrade for you. We finally reached the rotational part of this guide, so please bear with me, it is a lot. I'll try to explain this as best and as quickly as I can. So Enhancement Shaman's rotation can change based on what talent they take. So we'll start with the Fire Nova rotation. So with Fire Nova, there are essentially two different playstyles you can work with. The first style is a funnel playstyle, and the second style is a multi-target playstyle. The funnel playstyle tends to work best in packs of 6 or greater, where there is one target that is either the main threat or tankier than all of the other targets. That said mob will be the focus of all of your damage. So when entering a pack, I personally like to start with a Flame Shock on a random target, and then I'll Primordial Wave the main target that I'm going to funnel. After doing this, I'll cast Spirit Wolves. Then I will spread the Primordial Wave Flame Shock with Lava Lash onto all the other targets. After this, I'll cast Fire Nova to erupt all the enemies with Flame Shock. Then I'll cast Sundering, then Crash Lightning, trying to hit as many enemies as possible with the frontal. After that, I'll cast Storm Strike to generate Maelstrom Weapon. Then I will cast Lightning Bolt to get the haste proc for my Legendary. After all of this, if you have hot hands, you should feel free to cast Lava Lash every other GCD, while casting Storm Strike and Crash Lightning anytime your buff is about to fall off. Obviously, try not to overcap on Maelstrom Weapon and spend it any chance you get. The only time you wouldn't want to spend it is if you have a Fire Nova up, in which case you would just press Fire Nova and then continue to spend. If your Primordial Wave manages to reset itself because of the Conduit, feel free to use it again or hold it for the next pack. If you're doing keys in the 15 to 20 range, I would recommend holding it for the next pack, and if you're doing keys above 20, it might be better just to spend it off cooldown. Other than that, be sure to keep Fire Nova off cooldown, and be sure to keep Sundering off cooldown. If you're running out of buttons to press Flame Shock. If you're really running out of buttons to press Frost Shock. And that's how you play the funnel playstyle. Now, let's get into the multi-target playstyle. So the multi-target playstyle is practically the same thing, except what you're doing different is you're applying your Lashing Flames debuff to as many targets as you can. The easiest way that I've found to do that is to spam tab target when you get hot hands. Obviously this might not work in larger pools that have like 7 or more enemies, but the main idea is that every time you Lava Lash, you want it to be on a new target that doesn't have the debuff or refreshing a debuff that's about to fall off. Doing this will grant you significantly more multi-target damage. Now, I mentioned pretty early on into the video that Elemental Spirits RNG would come into play. Basically, what you're looking to get out of Elemental Spirits is the Fire Wolf. The Fire Wolf will cause your Lava Lash to apply a Molten Core debuff, which will increase all of the fire damage taken. So if you happen to spawn a Fire Wolf while doing your funnel or multi-target rotation, your damage will be amped up even further. And that's just about all you need to know about the Fire Nova build. Now, the other build we have to work with is the Hailstorm build. The Hailstorm build has a pretty similar priority list to the Flame Shock build, the main difference being that you want to Frost Shock anytime you cast a free cast of Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, because after you spend 5 Maelstrom Weapon to get a free cast, your Frost Shock automatically hits 5 more targets and does increased damage to all of them. This also means that if you spawn a Frost Wolf with you, all of your frost damage will be increased even further. So your opener should look like this. You want to Flame Shock your off target, then you want to Primordial Wave your main target. After that, you want to cast your Wolves, then Lava Lash to spread your Flame Shock. After that, you want to hit as many targets as you can with Sunder, and then Crash Lightning. Then use Storm Strike and use your free cast of Lightning Bolt to get the haste proc from your Primordial Wave. After this, cast Frost Shock to consume the Hailstorm buff. From here, you want to prioritize using Lava Lash off cooldown, and using Chain Lightning anytime you have 5 Maelstrom Weapon or more. It's important that after every free Chain Lightning, you use Frost Shock to consume the buff. Also, you want to refresh the Crash Lightning buff anytime it's about to fall off. Storm Strike if you have nothing else to press, and if you really have nothing else to press Flame Shock. That concludes the rotational part of this guide. Hopefully it all makes sense. If I miss anything, I deeply apologize. This is one of the first guides I've ever made. Any information that I did miss that is notably important, I'll be sure to add to the comments below. But before we end this video, I wanted to show you guys a bunch of tips and tricks that I found super useful when playing this class. In Tazavesh Streets, the officers and security often have purgeable debuffs on them. Using your purge on these debuffs will help your team immensely, and they will thank you for it. Other purgeable buffs include the second boss in the Grand Menagerie, and also in the first boss of Iron Docks. There are also some really nice ways to cheat some damage gain with your Primal Lava Actuator Legendary and with your Primordial Wave haste buff. Perfect examples of this can be found in the bird phase during the second boss of Upper Karazhan, and also during the chessboard game. The way you cheese it is by just simply putting your dots on everything, even if it's not your main target. Like in this clip, for example, I just spread my Flame Shock to everyone I can. I hit the 4 in the center, and then I also dot the bishop. Doing this will allow my Flame Shocks to buff my Lava Lash damage, and also give me the ability to use my Primordial buff on 5 targets to gain 50% haste. Obviously, there's plenty more scenarios where this can be used, but these are just a couple of them. Just feel free to get creative with it. Another tip you can feel free to use to your advantage is for the first boss of Streets. If you get targeted with interrogation, you can channel Fleshcraft while it finishes cast to prevent you from being caged. It's pretty nifty if you want to keep high uptime on the boss. And that just about concludes everything I wanted to talk about in this guide. I wanted to thank every one of you that stuck through it through the whole guide, or even just skipped around to check parts that you wanted to see. Every bit of support means the most to me. This guide took a lot of work for me to make, and although it's not perfect, I think I did a pretty good job. If you enjoyed any part of this guide, please feel free to like and subscribe. Follow my Twitch at twitch.tv/lfdeity and follow my Twitter at deitywow. Thank you guys, and I will catch you later. Peace out.